Now, I direct your attention to the issue of the death penalty. And just for a few moments, we'd like to reflect about this on a world stage, especially in light of recent events in the world where Saudi Arabia has put people to death for various things. Whereas the government of Saudi Arabia has, in effect, the death penalty for a number of crimes, for adultery, for drug trafficking, for murder, for terrorism, for a number of crimes that affect the safety of the country and the lives and the prosperity of the people. The West has begun a campaign to criticize the executions that take place in Saudi Arabia, meaning the applications of their judicial system in cases that involve capital punishment. And as soon as you find Saudi Arabia executing a criminal after due process with court cases, appeals on different levels of local and national court systems and so on, you find people crying out in the world, what? Inhumane treatment or inhumane beheadings. You find them saying the people weren't given a fair trial, they were forced confessions and so on. Things that the people have no knowledge of. They just like to shout out things on the world stage in issues of politics. In reality, let's focus on one issue here. The world says that Saudi Arabia has the austere form of Wahhabism. You hear these kind of words on the news and in descriptions of Saudi Arabia, which includes the death penalty for blasphemy and for drug traffickers and things like this. Yes, there is the death penalty. And we say Islam has established for us the death penalty. Allah Ta'ala, from His wisdom and His knowledge of the creation, has assigned the death penalty as an option in some cases and as an obligation in some cases. Subhanallah. The death penalty is not something that is specific to Saudi Arabia. However, the countries here of the world that you see on this map here, the red countries, are countries that have the death penalty in official legal situations. In official court cases, the death penalty is an option for some punishments, right? As you see, that's a great part of the world, including where our critics come from most often in America. America specifically has the death penalty. I'd like to say, always look at your critic closely. Someone comes to criticize you and your religion, don't initially give up and go, oh, they got us on something and I'm embarrassed and you've got a weak point in my religion or something and you've caught me, and you're really embarrassing me. Rather, look at the person who's criticizing you. You'll find them to be the worst people with the worst stance on the same issues. The death penalty, according to America. Look at what countries in the world execute the people the most. And remember, Americans are the ones who criticize Saudi Arabia for the death penalty. America is right behind Saudi Arabia. Now, always, whenever you see this media produced by Western news agencies, always look, there's an asterisk by Sudan, Yemen, and Saudi Arabia. And then look at the asterisk. It means this rank is based on the minimum number of executions confirmed by researchers. As if to say, there are executions going on unofficially all over the place. We can't count them, but these are the official ones. Allahu Akbar. Yeah, America. Who's shooting down the young people in the ghetto? Execution style. Which police in this world will shoot somebody down like an execution? And that doesn't count as an execution, but it's a real execution. Have you seen in America anyone being executed by a police officer? Running from the police officer with no weapon, shot down? We hear this all the time. Executions is not called an execution. Let us say Allah knows best how many people America executes unofficially, instead of letting them put the asterisk on our Muslim countries. Subhanallah. So these, no asterisk for Iran and no asterisk for America, which is really where it should go. How many of the police have executed people and it doesn't count as an official capital punishment case. However, it's a lost life and it's a death penalty right there on the spot. Wallahu musta'an. The country they wish to defend America right now and Western critics of Islam is Iran. And they're saying, look at this Nemr guy. He is a political activist and he's trying to, work for freedoms for people, and he was executed. And they dress him up really nicely. However, He has targeted police force and military, and he has targeted government institutions, and he has tried to take lives of, the police force. Has he actually killed people? The Nimr? I don't know, but he's been involved in operations that are direct military opposition to the government in Saudi Arabia. Multiple times, on top of that, being involved in many other things as well. Openly calling for what? Autonomy for a certain part of Saudi Arabia, subhanAllah, to be given to the Shiite and so on. Openly calling for revolt, openly calling for dissension. While Saudi Arabia, in terms of Iran, comparatively, is nothing compared to Iran. It was some Iranians that were put to death because of their dissidence, because of their agitation of the people, that became something that the world would use to criticize Saudi Arabia, Saudi Shiite. Those that Iran have championed and said you've killed our brothers and so on. So we wish to say, let us look at America now. Since America is our critic and the West is our critic, America itself, do they have the death penalty? Is it something that they practice? Of course they do. We live here, we know that. In fact, you see the red states here making up the majority of the West and the Southeast. You see the death penalty in place in the majority of the states of America. States without the death penalty are the minority. Then you have a few states with a governor imposed option that he can impose the death penalty in certain cases. So the death penalty is not only an option, but it's a reality that we all know about, right? Now, what about American policy on the death sentence? What about the death penalty? Because they love to put in the news that there are beheadings and make the beheading seem to be this barbaric, cruel, inhumane way of taking the life in capital punishment, right? So the beheading is, the word beheading has a feeling of it, of just like barbarians, right? These are people who have no respect for life. They'll just chop your head off. So you have this beheading. The word beheading has this very, very ancient feel to it, which they have done a lot of work to load it up like that, so that when you hear the word beheading, you think inhumane and barbaric. However, what are the methods used by the civilized West, the Western critics of Islam? Lethal injection, the gas chamber, and the electric chair. And as well, what? Hanging as an option. Hanging is an alternative still to this day. Hanging by a rope around your neck. Hanging as an option by the choice of the condemned. If he doesn't want I guess sometimes the lethal injection, or he doesn't want the gas chamber, he can choose to be hung. It could be his choice, right? This is, I guess, generosity there at the last stages of a person's life. However, in some states, some of the death penalties are not options. What you need to look at is your critics and how they kill people in their cases of capital punishment, right? Lethal injection. Some people have a misconception about lethal injection. They think lethal injection is that, you get an injection like how an animal is put down. You just take his consciousness away and then he's dead and then they bury him or something. Like very humane type of just putting someone out of their life. That's it. However, who knows the reality of lethal injection? Anyone know? It's a cocktail of poisons injected one after the next that do not kill the person at first. They wish for him to suffer. They wish for him to suffer. They wish for him to be in pain. And based on that, see the window there, just above the bed? What's that window for? That window is for viewing. This is to give the family the family of the victim, to resolve the situation. We've seen the person who's been killed. So it's an event that is witnessed. So it is not that he closes his eyes and he's gone, and that's a very peaceful exit for him. Rather that he suffers, and that he is tormented and tortured for the last moments of his life. And sometimes when not administered properly, the person goes on struggling. He's not been killed when he was supposed to have been killed. Something happened where the injection didn't go into the vein, it went into his flesh or something. And so it didn't go to his heart. And he is in pain and he is in torment for an extremely long amount of time, sometimes up to 45 minutes or an hour, gasping and going through, convulsions and things like this. And the people who came to see, for example, the murderer of our father, his life end, they came and they left disgusted. and terribly disturbed by what they saw, to the point where many times they scramble to pull the blinds down to not let anyone see what is happening when they botch the lethal injection. That's just a lethal injection. What about the gas chamber? What about the electric chair? These are the methods of the Western civilized world that criticizes Islam. If you think the electric chair is what? You shock someone and they die instantly? You give them a shock so powerful that it just knocks the soul right out of their body and they're done? Rather, the electricity is administered carefully in a slow, gradual increase so as to torture the person. So for the person tastes torment and torture for the last moments of his life. Many times the person would scream and bleed, and they tape his face so that the eyes don't pop out of the sockets, because the eyes can come out of the sockets because of the high dose of electricity. People have literally been set on fire because of mistaken practices in applying the sponge in a certain way, the wrong way, or strapping him in a certain way. The straps have caught on fire. And they have noticed from some victims of such inhumane treatment that they are put on fire and they are charred and smoking as they are killed. And in Islam, of course, لا يعذب بالنار إلا رب النار. No one in Islam ever punishes anyone with fire, either electrical fire or flame fire, except the Lord of the fire, the one who created the hellfire as a punishment for those whom He wills to punish there. These methods of killing people, the gas chamber as well, is equally cruel. It is to give gratification to the victims or to the families of the victims of the crimes that warrant the death penalty. It gives gratification and it gives them solace, it gives them closure to an event, to know that the one who transgressed against us has been put to death and so on. However, when you look to its application and you compare that to the Islamic method of, for example, the one that they criticize so much is the beheading. You must know the beheading, it's not only that the process of someone's head being removed is essentially painless, because why? There's no head there. There's nothing, there's no pain to feel. Life is over in the blink of an eye. There's no torment and torture at the end of his life. Rather, think about this. What does a Muslim who has been, let's say he's been tried with murder and he's been found guilty, and they're going to apply a nafsu bin nafs. He's going to lose his life now as a result of his murder of someone. Now he's put to death. Now what happens? Not used to tap. He's going to die for what he's done already. There's no tawbah for him. What do they say to him? They say, accept this, submit to this, because whoever faces a had min hududillah, it's a kafara for him, it's an expiation for him. So they encourage him to have optimism and to think well of Allah. And you are now going to be part of a system, you are going to be a lesson for other people, you are part of a system here that is beneficial. You individually, you're going to lose your life in this world, but it's a kafara for you. We tell you you're going back to Allah with that crime of murder expunged. You don't have to face Allah for it because you faced your punishment in this life. Make tawbah to Allah, do a lot of good. He's in jail for a while, he's not just killed the day after the murder. He has a long time to prepare for his execution. They're reading ayat from the Quran about al-qisas. Subhanallah. They're reading ayat. They're reading Quranic verses to him about qisas. Right? That remind him of the wisdom of that system. Qisas, the laws of retribution, a life for a life, and so on. So he passes out of this world hearing the speech of Allah Ta'ala by people telling him to be patient and submit, and the reward will be for you in the hereafter. What do the families of the victims do after he passes away? Can they curse him and say, good, that stinking animal? No, this is not permissible. Rather, what do they do? They carry him. They make janazah prayer over him. The one who cuts the head or the one who executes him will be from the people who pray over him. The family that was there to witness his death, the bystanders, those who know about the case, they'll be praying and walking with his burial and burying him, making dua for Allah to forgive him. Mercy and love. The society gains a huge benefit and lesson from it. Once everyone sees that, they say, subhanallah, murder is no joke. Murder is not an option. It is no joke. It is serious. And then people get angry and they remember what they've seen. They remember what they've heard about. I'm red hot mad at somebody. But murder is not an option for me. I can't just grab anything and start hitting him and try to kill him when, anger takes over, when the shaitan gets the best of me. Because why? Murder is very serious. Subhanallah. So then the society now becomes protected from crimes of murder because of what they've seen and what they pass on to each other. Subhanallah. Mercy, levels and levels of mercy. So a person, he leaves this worldly life like that to the mercy of Allah Ta'ala with all the believers praying on his behalf. Versus what? This room here. No prayer on him. What are they going to do? Burn his body. Right? Most likely, the prisoner, the state is in charge of him. Default is not, he gets no honorable burial. What does he get? Cremation. That's the default. Just put him in the oven, burn his bones and his flesh up, get rid of him, and dump out the ashes. That's how they treat him. Right? No prayer for him, no official prayer, no unofficial prayer for him, no burial of any honor. Right? Nothing like that. Compare that to al-Islam. And all they want to do is focus on the word beheading. But look how many meanings are involved in both cases, from the critics and from the criticized. Subhanallah. Open your eyes. Ask our critics to open their eyes and open their hearts and look at things fairly. And know what you're criticizing. Know what it is that you're criticizing. Subhanallah. I'll read a couple stories to you which you may find interesting. These are records of botched attempts at applying the death penalty. Just so you know the reality. Now imagine a botched attempt at a beheading. It can happen. The cut didn't go all the way through, or he didn't cut right at the neck or something like that. It's just another swipe. It's going to turn into a second swipe. If anything, a bad practice of it would lead to 1 or 2 seconds of a person being in pain. That's it. Compare that to this. August 10th, 1982, in Virginia. These are all American cases, huh? No media representatives witnessed the execution. No details were ever released by the Virginia Department of Corrections. No attorney was present, or an attorney was present later stated that it took 55-second jolts of electricity to kill Frank Coppola. A 55-second jolt. That's a whole minute of electricity, right? The second jolt produced the odor and sizzling sound of burning flesh, and Coppola's head and leg caught on fire. Smoke filled the death chamber from floor to ceiling with a smoky haze. It was set on fire and burned and charred. That was his death penalty on the electric chair, right? In the civilized Western world, in the state of Virginia. 1983, the list goes on and on. These are just a few samples of that, huh? Electrocution. After the first jolt of electricity, sparks and flames erupted from the electrode attached to the man's leg. The electrode burst from the strap holding it in place and caught on fire. Smoke and sparks came out from under the hood in the vicinity of the condemned's left temple. 2 physicians entered the chamber and found a heartbeat. The electrode was reattached to his leg. Another jolt of electricity applied. This resulted in more smoke and burning flesh. Again, the doctors found a heartbeat. Ignoring the pleas of the man's lawyer, a third jolt of electricity was applied. The execution took 14 minutes and left the man's body charred and smoldering. These are our critics. These are our critics. These are those who say cruel and barbaric beheadings. This is coming out of their mouths. And these are the states that they live in. Cruel and barbaric beheadings that they criticize. What is this? A man being cooked. A man being barbecued. Subhanallah. What if the media were to report it like that? The biased media that uses the word beheadings and executions, but when it comes to them, it's capital punishment being applied and society being made safe. Why don't they call it barbecuing people and burning people? Why don't they use the words that describe actually what happens for themselves? Because they are in charge of the word choices. So the word choice for what they do is capital punishment, judicial system, safety and protection of the people and all of that. The word choices for the Muslims are beheadings, barbaric, cruelty, inhumane, violations of human rights, and so on. Read the third one. We'll stop with the third one. There are many. I even have more after that as well. The third one here. 1983 in Mississippi. A man dies of asphyxiation. He suffocated, right? Officials had to clear the room 8 minutes after the gas was released. When grazed, the man's desperate gasps for air repulsed the witnesses. His attorney of Montgomery criticized state officials for clearing the room when the inmate was still alive. It said, noted death penalty defense attorney so-and-so, the guy died banging his head against a steel pole in the chamber while the reporters counted his moans, 11 according to the Associated Press. Later it was revealed that the executioner, Barry Bruce, was drunk. Cruel and barbaric beheadings versus this. Yeah? SubhanAllah, I ask you, if you had to face the death penalty and you had to leave this world, do you want to be in the care of the Muslim government, or do you want to be in the care of Mississippi, Alabama, Virginia, or any state in America? You're going to go now, because why? You've committed a crime and you're going to face the death penalty. Every person, Muslim and non-Muslim, where do you want to be to breathe your last few breaths? Do you want to be in the hands of the Muslims and the Muslim government and die with a pinch on your neck? Or do you want to be beating your head on a pole, on fire, or whatever other choices that are available to you under the non-Muslims and their cruel, barbaric, sinister, disgusting, sadistic systems of torture before death? SubhanAllah. It's always important for us that we look at the critic. Why? Because the critic sometimes doesn't have a leg to stand on. And this is the case here, walhamdulillah, as is very clear when you look at the way the Muslims in an established Muslim country execute criminals and those who have, been judged worthy of capital punishment versus those in the West who have to face capital punishment. The comparison should be very clear to you, that this kind of torture and torment of a human life is not justified. They themselves, they have critics that speak out against the death penalty because of matters like this, and they are repulsed and they are disgusted by it as well. Yet, with all of that, they don't say we need to fix ourselves. We really need to fix ourselves before we begin criticizing the world, governments, and how they apply capital punishment. They go on with their criticism while their house is in shambles, and Allah Ta'ala knows best. وصلى اللهم وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين.